So I watched an interesting video, and it was about a, a gravesite in Jerusalem. And first, you got to know a little bit about how people were buried back then. You know, what did they do with the body? Well, generally, what they did was they let the body rot, and then the bones they put in a tomb. So it was kind of like you might have an area, above a tomb or nearby, where the body can decompose, and you take those bones and put it in. And so this archaeologist was had done this site. They had done extensive, archaeological digging in the site. They found this grave and this tomb. Now, what every archaeologist over there wishes they could find is an untouched tomb. Now, since people were often buried with something of value, over 2,000 years or so, people have gotten in, broken in, and stolen everything. So basically, you're going to find some bones, but anything they might have had that had any value whatsoever is long gone. So they go to this archaeologist. He's extensively, done this one site, so they've taken everything of value out of it so they can study it. And the rock formations are still there. So he's got this group of kids there. And there's one kid that is really getting on his nerves. The kid will, pull on his shirt and say, "Hey, mister, look what I found, look what I found." And, the guy turns around, and the guy's driving him crazy. So finally he says, "Oh, see that tomb right there? Where did pictures of that? So could you go in there and clean it up?" And he's like, "Oh, yeah." So he gets some tools, goes in there. And then a little while later, there's someone pulling on his shirt again. He turns around, and there's a kid with pottery saying, "Look what I found." And the guy's like, "Oh, where did you find that?" And you can't move something you find. Well, and what had happened was the ceiling, this part of the tomb this child was in is like a box. And there's a stone floor, which you would expect. It's carved out of stone, right? Well, this kid, good little boys, went in there banging on things, and he actually made a hole in the floor and found stuff under there. Well, it wasn't really the floor. What had happened, I guess, was a piece of the roof had fallen and covered some of the gravesite. And, it kind of did it in such a way so it looked like the floor. In other words, it was same shape and everything fit tight. And so they go in there and they find this, all this stuff in there, all this pottery and different things. But what they find is two very small silver scrolls. And so they take them, the archaeologists, I'm sure they're using certain methods to do it, but eventually they unroll it, and this archaeologist is looking at it, and one of the first things he sees is the name of God, which we would pronounce Yahweh now, in this scripture. And it's a scripture about, may God bless you, may his face shine upon you. And so he can actually read this. And it's written in First Temple Hebrew. Evidently, of course, like other languages, the writing system evolved so that during the Second Temple period, the writing is quite different, the style of the letters and things, than the First Temple period. And so, and plus they've got pottery they can date too. But basically, this scripture is 2,700 years old. So it's an enormous find, and it was found by this, little kid that was, just driving this archaeologist crazy. So it's considered a really significant find. It's interesting too, I'll just mention, this conflict between Jews and Muslims, you could say Christian and Muslims too, about the cities and where were the Jewish people? Were they a recent invention? And different things. It's really bizarre to read some of the things that Muslim scholars will say, and it just doesn't write with any archaeology we have. So here we know, 700 BC, there are people writing, and they're writing about Yahweh, about the God of the Hebrews. And actually, Jerusalem as a city goes back 5,000 years because it was inhabited by other people. So it has a really long history, and archaeology supports that history. Now, if we go over to the other side and we look at Muslims who say, no, there's no history of the Jewish people, which we know there is. We should dig it and find it up. Dig it up and find it and dig it up, like the scripture. And when we look back at Muslims who they have a similar attachment to the city of Mecca, okay? And Mecca supposedly, according to them, is way older than Jerusalem and was the center of the world at one time, known world. And of course what we have is, so here we have all these artifacts in Jerusalem, but in Mecca we have nothing. Any archaeological things that are done in Mecca, around Mecca, support the idea that Mecca isn't an ancient city. So this really destroys one of the pillars of the Islamic belief, that you have the man Muhammad, you have the book, the Quran, and then you have the third thing, which is Mecca, the city. And we just don't see any of those things. And there's been extensive digging and things in Mecca. They've, built huge things to, help Muslims worship when they go there and all these things. So they've had extensive digging, and they haven't found one artifact. Where in Jerusalem, that it is an ancient city, you can't dig anywhere. If you're digging and you stumble on anything remotely, whatever, the construction stops and the archaeologists go in. And it's very different than, basically you can dig anywhere in Jerusalem and find history. But in Mecca, you can dig anywhere and find nothing. But anyway, this was neat to see that this scripture, what they were saying, predated the Dead Sea Scrolls by 900 years. And just a really exciting find, to me at least, and other people that are interested in biblical archaeology. Bye.